In the heart of Oak Ridge City, where ambition fueled the skyline and the streets whispered untold stories, the lives of its inhabitants reflected a delicate balance of progress and prejudice. Beneath the city's shimmering lights lay a truth many refused to confront, a divide that simmered quietly until moments of reckoning brought it to the surface. Tonight, such a moment was brewing, unplanned but inevitable, as two men from vastly different walks of life unknowingly approached a shared crossroads. Dr. Marcus Thompson, a man whose intellect and precision were unmatched in the operating room, carried a quiet dignity that belied the struggles he faced outside it. For all his accolades, he knew the weight of assumptions, the silent stares that questioned his place in spaces he had rightfully earned. He had built his life on resilience, yet even the strongest walls could feel the strain of constant judgment. Tonight, dressed in unassuming clothes and walking the same streets as countless others, he was simply another figure in the city's restless tide. Meanwhile, Officer Richard Dawson navigated his patrol with an air of authority that masked his own insecurities. His uniform, a symbol of order, had become a tool to reinforce his worldview, a lens clouded by years of unchecked bias. Dawson believed he understood the city, its rhythms and its people, but his understanding was skewed, shaped by fear and a refusal to look beyond the surface. He wore his badge like armor, yet it shielded him from truths he refused to face. Tonight, his path would cross with Dr. Thompson's, setting into motion a series of events that neither could predict. As the evening deepened, the city's pulse quickened, its streets alive with the hum of lives intersecting, diverging, and colliding. The encounter between the doctor and the officer would begin as an ordinary moment, a routine stop on a routine night. But routine would give way to revelation as assumptions unraveled and the stark reality of their worlds came into focus. In the charged silence of that moment, the weight of history and the promise of change hung in the air, waiting to tip the scales. What followed would ripple far beyond the confines of that night, challenging not only the individuals involved but the very fabric of a society that prided itself on progress while clinging to old wounds. Oak Ridge City, with all its complexities, was about to witness a story that would force it to confront its own reflection, a tale of courage, accountability, and the undeniable power of truth. For in the collision of these two lives lay the seeds of transformation, a reminder that even in the darkest corners, light has the power to break through. In the heart of Oak Ridge City, where the hum of ambition intertwined with the echoes of inequality, Dr. Marcus Thompson was no stranger to navigating dual realities. By day, he was a revered neurosurgeon, his skill set a beacon of hope for patients and colleagues alike. By night, however, he became just another man subjected to the biases of a world that refused to see beyond his skin. Marcus had long since mastered the art of compartmentalizing his existence, but even his steady resolve would be tested by the events about to unfold. Officer Richard Dawson, meanwhile, carried the weight of his own contradictions. He was a man who believed in order but often mistook control for justice. His partner, Officer Elena Cruz, had grown increasingly uneasy with his methods, but her attempts to challenge him were met with deflection or silence. Their dynamic simmered with unspoken tension, a subplot of its own that hinted at a reckoning yet to come. Elena's quiet observations of Richard's behavior had planted seeds of doubt, and she found herself questioning not just him, but the very system they served. On this particular evening, a call crackled through their radio about a suspicious vehicle in a well-to-do neighborhood. Marcus, exhausted from a grueling shift, had pulled over to check his GPS after taking a wrong turn. The sleek car he drove, a gift to himself after years of relentless hard work, became an unintended symbol of provocation in Dawson's eyes. As the patrol car approached, Marcus felt the familiar churn of unease in his stomach, the kind that came from years of knowing that respectability and success were not always shields against prejudice. The interaction began with Dawson's sharp tone, his questions laced with an edge that presumed guilt before innocence. Marcus remained calm, his responses measured, but the tension was palpable. Elena stood a few paces behind, watching the exchange with a growing sense of discomfort. She noticed the subtle shifts in Marcus's demeanor, the way his hands remained visible, his voice steady but firm, as though he were navigating a minefield. It was a scene she had witnessed too many times, and yet, this felt different. There was something about Marcus, his composure, his quiet authority, that made her hesitate. As the confrontation escalated, a small crowd began to gather, their murmurs adding fuel to an already volatile situation. Among them was a young journalist, Maya Patel, who had been following stories of police misconduct in Oak Ridge. Her presence, armed with a camera and a keen eye for injustice, would prove pivotal in the unfolding narrative. Maya's instincts told her this was more than just another routine stop. It was a moment that could expose deeper fractures within the city's facade. What neither Dawson nor Marcus realized in that charged moment was that their encounter was the spark for a chain reaction. The lives of those connected to them, Elena, Maya, and even the bystanders, would become intertwined in ways none of them could predict. Subplots of loyalty, accountability, and the struggle for systemic change began to take root, each thread pulling the characters deeper into a web of conflict and revelation. As the night wore on and the city's rhythm continued unabated, the seeds of transformation were sown. Marcus, with his unyielding dignity, and Elena, with her burgeoning courage, would find themselves at the center of a storm that would challenge not just their own beliefs, but the very fabric of Oak Ridge City itself. In the end, it would not be a single act of defiance or heroism that brought change, but the collective power of voices refusing to be silenced. In the end, the streets of Oak Ridge City felt a little different. The conversation sparked by that night lingered in the air, a reminder that progress, though slow and often painful, was possible. And as Marcus walked through the city, his white coat once again a symbol of hope, he knew that the work was far from over. But for the first time in a long time, it felt like the city was ready to listen. The events that unfolded on that pivotal night in Oak Ridge City became a turning point not just for Dr. Marcus Thompson and Officer Richard Dawson, but for the city itself. What began as a routine stop driven by bias ended with a confrontation that stripped bare the systemic issues festering beneath the city's polished exterior. Dawson, exposed for his prejudices and misuse of authority, faced not only public outcry but a reckoning within the police department. His badge, once a symbol of power, became a mirror reflecting his own shortcomings. Forced into introspection, he began a journey of unlearning, a slow, painful process that would reshape his understanding of justice and humanity. For Dr. Thompson, the ordeal was both a personal trial and a professional awakening. His decision to speak out, to use his platform as not just a healer but an advocate, sparked a wave of reform within Oak Ridge. He partnered with community leaders, police reform advocates, and even some officers willing to confront their biases, creating programs that bridged divides and fostered empathy. His story became a rallying cry, a reminder that silence in the face of injustice is complicity. Through his resilience, he turned a moment of personal indignity into a movement that demanded accountability and systemic change. Oak Ridge City, once content to hide behind its progressive facade, could no longer ignore the fractures within its foundation. Conversations about race, privilege, and power erupted across neighborhoods, schools, and workplaces. People who had once looked the other way began to confront uncomfortable truths. The city, like Dawson, was forced to reckon with its own reflection, and in doing so, began the slow, arduous process of transformation. As the dust settled, one thing became clear: change is not inevitable, but it is possible when individuals refuse to accept the status quo. Dr. Thompson's courage and conviction served as a beacon, proving that even in the face of prejudice, the power to heal extends far beyond the operating room. And so, Oak Ridge City moved forward, scarred but hopeful, its streets no longer just a backdrop for injustice but a testament to what can happen when people demand better. Now, the question falls to us: what will we do in our own cities, our own communities, to confront the biases that linger in the shadows? The time to act is now. Because in the end, justice isn't just a concept, it's a choice. Will you make it?